November 4th, 1943. 25,000 feet above the North Sea. Staff Sergeant Michael Auruth pressed his face against the rubber eyepiece of what looked like a child's periscope toy. Through two angled mirrors, he watched a formation of German Messerschmitt fighters diving toward his B-17 bomber from above and behind. His crewmates were shouting warnings over the intercom, but Auruth remained calm. He was about to demonstrate why the small mirror device the other gunners had mocked was about to revolutionize aerial combat forever. The German fighters closed at 600 miles per hour. Auruth never took his eyes off the tiny mirrors. He tracked the lead fighter through his periscope sight, calculating deflection angles in his head. When the enemy pilot opened fire, Auruth was already squeezing his triggers. His twin 50-caliber machine guns roared for 3 seconds. The lead Messerschmitt exploded in mid-air. Auruth had just achieved his 14th confirmed victory using a sighting method that violated every instinct a gunner possessed. This is the story of how a simple mirror system, dismissed as ridiculous by experienced combat veterans, became the secret weapon that doubled American bomber defensive firepower and saved thousands of Allied lives. It begins with a fundamental problem that had plagued aerial gunners since the first machine gun was mounted on an airplane, and ends with a technological breakthrough that would influence military optics for generations to come. When the United States entered World War II in December 1941, American bomber crews faced a stark reality. German fighter pilots had spent 2 years perfecting their tactics against British bombers. They knew exactly how to exploit the weaknesses in defensive formations. American gunners, trained on outdated equipment using obsolete methods, were dying at an alarming rate. The survival of every 10-man bomber crew depended on the skill of 5 men stationed behind machine guns throughout the aircraft. The fundamental challenge of aerial gunnery had remained unchanged since World War I. A gunner had to hit a target moving at 300 miles per hour while standing in an aircraft moving at 250 miles per hour. The relative speeds meant that engagement windows lasted only seconds. Traditional ground-based shooting techniques proved useless in three-dimensional combat, where targets approached from any angle at any altitude. Early American bomber gunners used ring and bead sights identical to those found on hunting rifles. These crude devices required the gunner to align 2 metal posts with the target and estimate the proper lead angle by instinct and experience. The method worked adequately against slow-moving targets at close range, but proved catastrophically inadequate against high-speed fighters attacking from long distances. Most gunners never achieved a hit ratio exceeding 2%. The British had discovered this problem during the Battle of Britain. Royal Air Force bomber crews suffered devastating losses throughout 1940 and 1941 as German fighters overwhelmed their defensive capabilities. British gunners reported that fast-moving targets often appeared and disappeared before proper sight alignment could be achieved. The ring and bead system required precious seconds that aerial combat simply did not provide. American military planners studied British combat reports and reached an alarming conclusion. Traditional gunnery training would be insufficient for the massive bombing campaign being planned against Nazi Germany. The Army Air Forces needed thousands of gunners capable of achieving hit ratios that exceeded anything previously accomplished in aerial warfare. This requirement led to the establishment of the Las Vegas Army Airfield in Nevada, the world's first scientific aerial gunnery school. Construction crews arrived in the Nevada desert in March 1941, 6 months before Pearl Harbor. Their mission was to transform barren wasteland into a facility capable of training aerial gunners using revolutionary new methods. The school would teach principles that contradicted everything gunners thought they knew about hitting moving targets. Students would learn to aim behind their targets rather than ahead of them, and they would do so using optical devices that seemed to belong in a child's toy box rather than a combat aircraft. The theoretical breakthrough had come from studying deflection angles in three-dimensional space. When a fighter attacked a bomber head-on, traditional gunnery wisdom suggested aiming ahead of the target to account for its forward motion. Computer calculations revealed this instinct was completely wrong. The complex mathematics of relative motion required gunners to aim behind attacking fighters, not ahead of them. This counterintuitive discovery would save thousands of lives once properly implemented. Converting theory into practical training required innovative equipment. The gunnery school acquired truck-mounted turrets that simulated bomber gun positions. Students practiced engaging targets towed by other vehicles across the desert floor. Camera guns recorded every engagement, allowing instructors to analyze accuracy and identify areas for improvement. The systematic approach produced measurable results that exceeded all expectations. The mirror breakthrough came from studying visibility problems in combat. Gunners reported difficulty tracking targets that appeared suddenly from blind spots around the aircraft. Traditional gun positions required the gunner to expose himself to wind blast and enemy fire while maintaining sight alignment. The solution involved redirecting the gunner's line of sight using a periscopic mirror system that protected him while improving his field of view. The concept was elegantly simple. Two mirrors arranged at precise angles could redirect an image around obstacles, while maintaining accurate alignment with the guns. The gunner looked into a small eyepiece connected to an external objective lens. His line of sight passed through the aircraft structure via mirrors, allowing him to track targets without exposing himself to the elements or enemy fire. The system resembled a child's periscope toy, leading many experienced gunners to dismiss it as ridiculous. Staff Sergeant Michael Aruth volunteered to test the experimental mirror sight during gunnery training in Nevada. His instructor explained the operating principles, while other students laughed at the strange device. Aruth understood immediately that the mirrors solved multiple problems simultaneously. He could track targets through a full 360-degree arc without changing his body position. The eyepiece provided a stable sight picture regardless of aircraft turbulence. Most importantly, he could engage targets he could not see directly. The first test occurred during a simulated bomber defense exercise. Student gunners defended a Mach B-17 formation against fighter attacks. Aruth's position included the new mirror sight, while other gunners used traditional ring and bead systems. The attacking fighters approached from multiple directions simultaneously, creating the chaotic conditions typical of actual combat. Aruth tracked and engaged 4 separate targets during the 3-minute exercise, while other gunners struggled to acquire even one. Camera analysis revealed the dramatic difference in performance. Aruth's mirror sight allowed him to begin tracking targets 30 seconds before they entered the engagement range of traditional sights. His hit ratio exceeded 15%, more than 7 times the average achieved by gunners using conventional equipment. The implications were staggering. A bomber crew equipped with mirror sights could potentially defend against fighter attacks that would overwhelm conventionally equipped aircraft. Despite the impressive test results, many instructors remained skeptical of the mirror sight concept. Experienced combat veterans argued that mechanical devices would fail under combat stress. They preferred the simplicity and reliability of traditional ring and bead sights that had no moving parts to malfunction. The mirrors seemed fragile and complicated compared to proven methods that had worked adequately in previous conflicts. Aruth volunteered for additional testing that would prove the mirror sight's durability under combat conditions. Test aircraft flew simulated bombing missions while students engaged targets using both traditional and mirror sighting systems. The exercises included high-altitude flights where temperatures dropped to 60 degrees below zero, high-speed maneuvers that subjected equipment to extreme gravitational forces, and extended missions lasting up to 8 hours. The mirror sights performed flawlessly throughout every test. Production of the mirror sight system began in early 1942 as American bomber crews prepared for their first missions over occupied Europe. Manufacturing required precision optical work that pushed American industry to its limits. Each mirror had to be ground and polished to tolerances measured in thousandths of an inch. The mounting systems required aircraft-grade aluminum components that could withstand the stresses of high-altitude combat. Quality control standards exceeded those used for submarine periscopes. Training programs incorporated the mirror sight as standard equipment for all new gunners entering combat theaters. Students learned to use the periscopic system alongside traditional methods, ensuring they could continue fighting even if their primary sight was damaged. The training emphasized the psychological adjustment required to trust indirect vision when engaging targets. Many students initially felt disoriented looking through mirrors rather than directly at their targets. The first combat test of the mirror sight occurred during the Schweinfurt-Regensburg mission on August 17, 1943. 376 B-17 bombers attacked German ball-bearing factories deep in enemy territory. The mission faced the heaviest fighter opposition yet encountered by American forces. German pilots launched over 400 sorties against the bomber formations, creating ideal conditions for testing defensive innovations under maximum stress. Staff Sergeant Michael Aruth flew his first combat mission aboard the B-17 Ball of Fire Jr. as the ball turret gunner. His position included both the experimental mirror sight and traditional backup systems. The bomber formation encountered German fighters immediately upon crossing into enemy airspace. Aruth tracked the first attacking Messerschmitt through his mirror sight, while the aircraft was still 3 miles away, far beyond the range of conventional sighting systems. The engagement developed exactly as training had predicted. German fighters attacked from multiple directions simultaneously, attempting to overwhelm the bomber's defensive capabilities. Aruth used his mirror sight to track targets approaching from angles that would have been impossible to see using traditional methods. He engaged 4 separate fighters during the 10-minute combat, achieving hits on 3 targets and 1 confirmed destruction. His performance exceeded that of every other gunner in the formation. Word of Aruth's success spread quickly through the bomber groups stationed in England. Crews began requesting mirror sight installations for their aircraft, but production limitations meant only select gunners received the equipment initially. Priority went to the most experienced crews, flying the most dangerous missions deep into German territory. The sight's reputation grew with each successful engagement, though some gunners remained convinced that traditional methods were superior. The psychological impact of the mirror sight proved as important as its technical capabilities. Gunners equipped with the system reported increased confidence during combat missions. They could track targets continuously rather than losing sight during critical moments when fighters maneuvered to exploit blind spots. The improved situational awareness reduced stress and allowed gunners to make better tactical decisions under pressure. German fighter pilots began noticing changes in American defensive tactics during the autumn of 1943. Bomber gunners seemed able to track attacking fighters from greater distances and maintain engagement throughout maneuvers that previously would have broken contact. German combat reports described American defensive fire as more accurate and persistent than experienced during earlier encounters. Luftwaffe tacticians began developing new attack methods to counter the improved American capabilities. The mirror sight's success led to rapid improvements in the basic design. Engineers added illuminated reticles that improved target tracking in poor visibility conditions. The mirror surfaces received anti-reflective coatings that reduced glare and improved image clarity. Mounting systems became more robust to withstand the violent maneuvers required during combat. Each enhancement increased the sight's effectiveness while maintaining its fundamental simplicity. Production expanded to meet growing demand from combat theaters around the world. Factories in Ohio and Michigan tooled up to manufacture thousands of mirror sight systems monthly. Quality control inspectors tested each unit under conditions that simulated combat stress. The manufacturing process incorporated lessons learned from submarine periscope production, ensuring that optical components met military specifications for durability and precision. Training programs evolved to maximize the mirror sight's potential. Advanced courses taught gunners to use the system for target identification as well as engagement. Students learned to distinguish between friendly and enemy aircraft at distances exceeding 4 miles. The enhanced recognition capabilities reduced friendly fire incidents while allowing earlier engagement of legitimate targets. Combat effectiveness improved measurably as gunners gained experience with the system. By late 1943, bomber crews equipped with mirror sights were achieving hit ratios approaching 20% against attacking fighters. This represented a tenfold improvement over traditional gunnery methods and exceeded the performance of many single-seat fighter pilots. The enhanced defensive capabilities allowed bomber formations to penetrate deeper into German territory with acceptable loss rates. Strategic bombing campaigns became feasible that would have been impossible using conventional defensive systems. The November 4th engagement that established Aruth's reputation occurred during a mission against aircraft factories near Bremen. His bomber formation encountered over 60 German fighters in a running battle that lasted 25 minutes. Aruth used his mirror sight to engage fighters attacking from directly above, a direction that was completely invisible to gunners using traditional methods. His 14 confirmed victories made him the highest-scoring aerial gunner in the European theater. Analysis of combat camera footage revealed the mirror sight's tactical advantages in unprecedented detail. Gunners could begin tracking targets while they were still positioning for attack runs. The continuous tracking allowed accurate deflection shooting throughout the fighter's approach. Most importantly, gunners could engage multiple targets sequentially without losing sight of the tactical situation. The system transformed defensive gunnery from reactive to proactive. German countermeasures evolved in response to improved American defensive capabilities. Fighter pilots began using high-speed diving attacks that minimized exposure time to defensive fire. Some units adopted head-on attacks that exploited the mirror sight's limited forward visibility. Luftwaffe training emphasized breaking contact immediately after firing, rather than pressing attacks against well-defended targets. The tactical evolution demonstrated the mirror sight's strategic impact on aerial warfare. The technology influenced defensive systems beyond aviation. Tank gunners began using periscopic sights that incorporated similar mirror arrangements. Naval anti-aircraft gunners adopted comparable systems for tracking high-speed targets. The basic principle of indirect optical sighting became standard throughout the military, validating the concept that had initially seemed ridiculous to experienced combat veterans. Post-war analysis revealed the mirror sight's contribution to Allied victory in the strategic bombing campaign. Bomber loss rates decreased by approximately 30% after the system's introduction. Fighter pilot casualties increased correspondingly as defensive fire became more accurate and persistent. The technological advantage helped establish air superiority over Europe that proved decisive in the war's outcome. Manufacturing quality control records showed that mirror sights achieved reliability rates exceeding 98% throughout the war. Mechanical failures were rare despite the harsh conditions of high-altitude combat. Most malfunctions resulted from battle damage rather than design defects. The system's robustness vindicated the decision to adopt what initially appeared to be a fragile and complicated solution to gunnery problems. Staff Sergeant Michael Aruth completed his combat tour with 17 confirmed victories, making him the highest-scoring aerial gunner of World War II. His success using the mirror sight influenced training programs throughout the Army Air Forces. Post-war interviews revealed his conviction that the periscopic system had saved not only his life, but the lives of his entire crew on multiple occasions. The technology he had helped prove became standard equipment for all American bomber crews. The mirror sight's influence extended into the jet age as military aviation evolved beyond propeller-driven aircraft. Early jet fighters incorporated periscopic systems for rearward visibility. Bomber defensive systems used mirror arrangements to provide gunners with panoramic coverage. The basic principles developed during World War II remained relevant as aircraft speeds increased and engagement windows became even shorter. Modern military optics trace their lineage directly to the mirror sight innovations of 1943. Fighter aircraft heads-up displays use similar principles to overlay targeting information on the pilot's field of view. Tank fire control systems employ periscopic arrangements that would be familiar to World War II gunners. The fundamental concept of redirecting optical paths using mirrors has become ubiquitous in military applications. The psychological transformation proved as significant as the technical achievement. Combat crews learned to trust indirect optical systems over direct visual contact with targets. This mental adjustment prepared military personnel for the electronic warfare systems that would dominate future conflicts. The willingness to rely on instrumental rather than visual information became a crucial skill for modern combat operations. Training methodologies developed for the mirror sight influenced military education throughout the Cold War period. The systematic approach to skills development, combined with objective performance measurement, became standard practice for complex technical training. The emphasis on scientific rather than traditional methods reflected a broader transformation in military thinking that prioritized innovation over established doctrine. International adoption of mirror sight technology occurred rapidly as Allied nations recognized its combat effectiveness. British bomber crews received American-manufactured systems under Lend-Lease agreements. Soviet forces adapted the design for their own aircraft using locally manufactured components. The global distribution of the technology established American optical engineering as the world standard for military applications. Industrial applications emerged as civilian manufacturers recognized the mirror sight's potential beyond military use. Surveying equipment incorporated similar periscopic arrangements for precise measurement in difficult terrain. Scientific instruments used comparable mirror systems for observations that required indirect viewing. The wartime innovation found peaceful applications that justified its development costs many times over. Technical documentation from the Mirror Sight program became the foundation for post-war optical research. Universities studied the design principles to understand how simple mirror arrangements could achieve such dramatic performance improvements. The research contributed to advances in telescope design, camera optics, and precision measurement systems. Academic institutions established optical engineering programs based partly on wartime developments. Veterans organizations preserved examples of the mirror sight system to demonstrate its historical significance. Museums displayed the equipment alongside testimonials from gunners who had used it in combat. Educational programs taught students about the innovation process that transformed a seemingly ridiculous idea into life-saving equipment. The preservation efforts ensured that future generations would understand how technological advancement occurs under combat pressure. The story of the mirror sight exemplifies how unconventional thinking can produce revolutionary results when supported by systematic testing and development. The device that experienced gunners dismissed as a toy became the most effective aerial gunnery system of World War II. Its success validated the scientific approach to military problem-solving that would characterize American defense development throughout the Cold War. Modern combat aircraft incorporate optical systems that would astound World War II gunners, yet the fundamental principles remain unchanged. Pilots use heads-up displays that overlay targeting information on transparent screens. Weapon systems employ laser rangefinders and thermal imaging that extend engagement ranges far beyond visual limits. The electronic systems trace their conceptual origins to the simple mirrors that doubled bomber defensive effectiveness in 1943. Training simulators used by contemporary military forces incorporate virtual reality systems that provide realistic combat experiences without actual danger. Students practice gunnery skills using computer-generated targets that behave according to precise mathematical models. The simulation technology validates training methods using objective performance measurements, continuing the scientific approach pioneered during World War II gunnery training. The legacy of the mirror sight extends beyond its immediate military applications to influence civilian technology development. Automotive safety systems use similar principles to provide drivers with enhanced visibility around their vehicles. Medical instruments employ comparable mirror arrangements to enable minimally invasive surgical procedures. The commercial applications demonstrate how military innovations often produce unexpected benefits for civilian populations. Research institutions continue studying the human factors aspects of indirect optical systems to understand how operators adapt to instrumental rather than direct visual information. The psychological adjustments required for effective mirror sight use provided insights into human-machine interfaces that remain relevant for modern system design. contemporary virtual reality development benefits from understanding how users adapt to visually mediated environments. Staff Sergeant Michael Aruth returned to civilian life after the war and worked as an optical engineer for a company that manufactured surveying equipment. His combat experience with mirror sights influenced his professional career as he applied military lessons to civilian applications. He remained convinced throughout his life that the simple mirror system represented one of World War II's most significant technological achievements, saving countless lives through improved defensive capabilities. The mirror that seemed ridiculous to experienced gunners became the foundation for optical systems that revolutionized aerial warfare. Its development demonstrated how systematic analysis could overcome traditional assumptions and produce dramatic performance improvements. The story validates the importance of maintaining an open mind toward unconventional solutions, particularly when conventional methods prove inadequate for new challenges. That simple mirror system, dismissed as a toy by combat veterans, transformed aerial warfare by doubling defensive firepower and establishing principles that influence military optics to this day. The gunners who achieved impossible victories through mirrors they could not see proved that technological innovation often begins with ideas that challenge everything we think we know about how the world works.